it's really great that you're doing this session, because it's so important with any kind of tourism development, but in particular sustainable tourism development, where you really want to be strategic and think long term. As you'll see with some of the points today, that it's really important to be aware of how you're going to market your product, your experience in the beginning as things develop over time. And I'll show some great case studies today. We actually were just filming in Georgia last fall. And so I'll end with just one of the films we just produced in Georgia. So I think that'll be a good example. So let me just start here. So a quick snapshot of who I am. I'm based in Maine, in the northeast corner of the United States. And my background actually getting into film is a very different path. I actually have an undergraduate degree in wildlife management, and then went to business school and studied international business. So it's been a different journey and path for me, but career-wise, professionally, my career has spawned media and the travel industry extensively, and sustainability. And I started actually as a photographer before starting GLP Films 10 years ago. And here's some of my contact information. I'll have it at the end if you're interested in connecting. Just quickly, I wanted to go over just a quick snapshot of who we are as an agency. We are a full service agency. We've been around, like I said, for over 10 years now, focused 100% on the travel industry. So we're a content marketing agency that's dedicated to the travel sector. You'll see some of the examples today of what I show you. We've won a number of awards in adventure travel, cultural travel, food travel. The content, we produce a pretty comprehensive content package for destinations. And while I will showcase video storytelling today, I will say that, photos play a very important role, especially nowadays in social media, and also articles. There are ways to leverage this. So it's not just about video. What makes us unique is we work really with the entire supply chain in the travel industry. So the content we produced, for instance, in Georgia, we're marketing it to outbound operators, travel agents in North America, Europe, et cetera. Distribution, so important. And that's why I think it's great that you're doing this session today, to really think about the strategy involved in helping tell your story, your experience in the travel industry, and then marketing that to both consumers and trade. Obviously, we have a real business approach in the work we do, and so the campaign results are extremely important for us, and we promise a very high return on investment, or ROI. And then lastly, part of the reason why we're doing this webinar today is the thought leadership. We've been in the industry a long time. We have a lot of experience, understanding, expertise on the travel sector, not just in marketing, but also the strategy and building your experience and your story. And so it's great to share some of our expertise with you all today. Again, another quick snapshot. We've produced a lot of content now. We just went over 200 videos in 40 countries globally. And I think the type of storytelling that we do focus on are right outlined here: adventure travel, cultural travel, food travel, which is actually the film we just won an award on in Georgia, luxury travel, sustainability, very important to us. We're very mission driven, and sustainable development, sustainable tourism development is really core to our work. And then we actually do a lot with emerging destinations, and I'll actually show you 3 of the films I'll show you today involve emerging travel destinations in different places in the world. And then lastly, I'm sort of walking through parts of this today, but we've developed this model in producing the content very strategically. The first step is looking at the strategy and the content, which I'll go over some of those elements today. Distribution, so important, in having a real distribution strategy and how to get the content out, but then also the content you actually produce, the stories, very important. So again, I'll walk through some aspects of this today. So I wanted to start off just by really making sure people are aware and understand how things have changed just in advertising. All the content you'll see is paid advertising. And I know some people are aware of that, but I think it's also important. But the style and way we present the content is very different. I actually came from more of a documentary film perspective, and we really, since the very beginning, made that a part of our approach and how to really authentically showcase content. So traditional advertising, as we know, television, even with social media and the internet, it's selling a product. It's very black and white. This is the product, buy this product or service, a lot of us have grown up with and been used to. Content marketing, though, on the other hand, is really about selling the value, the experience more indirectly. There's some education involved, but really the purpose of content marketing is to connect with your audience, really connect with that end user in a different way. And you're seeing that now with social media and other ways to really make a unique experience in gradually, subtly promoting your product or service. And in the travel industry, content marketing is really selling the experience that people have on your trip at your destination. And so, and storytelling, as I'll repeat later, storytelling is a type of content marketing. And I think the reason why we look at video, and I'll throw up these points here, video is just, as we all are seeing, it's becoming a dominant force of web traffic and social media traffic. And in 2022, it'll be 82% of the traffic that we see. We're also seeing, though, there's this opportunity, and especially with Armenia and other emerging destinations, that incorporating an aspect, doesn't have to be 100%, but some aspect of telling a story into videos is really going to be key. They're very important because there's a lot of content out there. And so it gets overwhelming. We're all on social media. We see it. And the videos that we engage with the most are probably going to be something that more is a story-based, and it ties into an emotional connection that we might have or aspire to in traveling. So storytelling can play an important role because it engages, it tells a story, it connects with people authentically. And that's important. And it really shows the power of storytelling. And what you'll see in the style that we use, we'll use either one character or a series of characters. In the first film, I'll show you there's one primary character, but in the work we did in Georgia, we actually had multiple characters. So it varies, but it does support ultimately this authenticity of the travel experience. And hopefully you'll see that today. I wanted to select 4 different examples that would show a different style of storytelling. But first and foremost, I think it is important with any emerging destination, and for all of you today from an educational perspective, from a capacity building perspective, to look at some of the building blocks of what is storytelling. And I wanted just to walk through some of the basic elements of what is a story and what makes up a story. And there's 4 primary components of making up a great story. The first is, and I really see this as the most important part, no question, is really the strategy behind it, is what's the purpose? What's the purpose of the story that you want to tell? What are the objectives? What are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to connect to an audience? Are you trying to promote a new trip? That is, I can't stress it enough, the most important part in developing a great story is really making it crystal clear of what are the goals, what are the objectives of what you're trying to accomplish. And because as you get farther down into distribution and marketing of it, you're always going to come back with what were we trying to accomplish here? I think the second part, and we see this with feature films that we see, is the story arc. What journey are we going to take people on? What experience do we want them to have? And I'll break down some of the elements of it, but I mentioned here the conflict, the plot. What's the ending going to be? It's important to be aware of it. You don't have to be an expert in it, but it's important just to know what emotional journey will we take people on, and you call that the story arc. The third is the characters. Who's going to help tell that story? It was very important for us, for instance, in filming in Georgia. We really wanted a cast of characters that really spoke to the different elements of the broader story that we were going to tell. And for Georgia's sake, it was adventure travel, cultural travel, food travel, and wine. So 4 very different elements, and each one of them really deserved its own character or person to help tell that story. And then the last is location. Where are you going to film to produce this content? Definitely very important, the visual. I've given some detail on this, but let's look at the first film. I'll show you 4 films today and try to be aware of what are we trying to accomplish with this? Who is helping tell this story? and you'll see him, Herman. What is the story, the journey that you go through, the arc, and then lastly, the location, the backdrop of Tierra del Fuego was amazing. So this was an emerging destination in the country of Chile, the southern, very southern tip. We were filming there for 4 days, and it really was one man's experience with tourism. And it was a very compelling story that we ended up winning the #1 adventure travel film in 2017. So it's something we were very proud of, and I hope you enjoy it. So here's the first film.
Ya la gente se acostumbró a las comodidades modernas, a pesar de que no son tantas acá en la zona, y no quieren ir donde no hay.
La noche estaba bonita, un cielo azul, con las montañas medias rojas.
Helada la noche. Helada la noche.
Nos acurrucamos harto.
Mi mujer. Todo lo que sea las labores de campo me han gustado siempre, yo de chico. Mi padre llegó aquí a estas tierras a los finales de la década del 30 como empleado de una empresa que vino a instalar un aserradero en Caleta María. De todo eso me gustaba de Tierra del Fuego, de andar a caballo, los paisajes, el mar de Tierra del Fuego. A mí la parte del mar me gusta mucho el mar. En esos años cuando yo empecé acá, que no había camino, no veíamos nadie en el año, a veces veíamos 2 personas. Punta Arenas me trataban de loco. Loco, estás loco, ¿cómo te vas a meter a un lugar que no hay camino, que esto, que lo otro, estás loco? Ahora todos los días, toda la semana pasa uno que me quiere comprar una parcela. Imagínense, ahí está el loco. Nunca pensé después en terminar en turismo, pero al principio yo odiaba el turismo, ¿no? Mi señora dice eso, que los turistas son gente feliz que anda paseando. Y llegué a entender eso, que realmente me agrada el asunto. Basta mirar el paisaje para decir qué es lo que lo trae a uno. Entonces, empecé a traer extranjeros a caballo cruzando la cordillera a pescar, y ahí empecé a conocer que viene gente muy interesante, conversa muchos temas entonces me empezó a gustar y lo encontré, empecé a encontrarle que llega gente que sabe muchas cosas de otros lugares, entonces realmente es entretenido, así que no. Y de ahí a poquito se fue dando que llegó el camino, empezó a llegar gente que quería alojamiento, que no es esto, lo otro, y empezamos a acondicionar una cabaña, la cabaña que estaba desocupada, y la empezamos a acondicionar, y de a poquito se fue dando. Nunca pensé mayormente en si era pionero, nunca lo pensé. Pero mi sueño era continuar lo que había quizás empezado mi papá. Siempre quiero hacer una casa ahí donde está la cabaña chica. Bueno, la hice yo después. Mi idea es construir una más. Pero este lugar, si tú pones muchas cabañas, lo vas a perder. Entonces mi idea es construir otra cabaña y otro camping, nada más, ¿no? Sí, me imagino que debería estar orgulloso porque él se sacrificó harto en este lugar igual. Realmente ya no puedo atender tanto, no puedo andar a caballo, pero todas mis hijas y mis nietos, todos les encanta el lugar, y Creo que muchos de ellos van a seguir por acá. Mi hija ya está, ella va a seguir con el asunto del turismo. Obviamente todos echamos de menos el pasado. Lo único que me falta es volver a andar a caballo.
So I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll go through some of the elements of this story that we just talked about. So the purpose here in telling this, and this is a real story. This is, authentic as it can be. What I loved about Herman, and I've seen this many times, but I really love his personal journey. The purpose of this story was to, open up the world to this region, Tierra Fuego. You can see the location in the story plays a very important role. It's beautiful, it's expansive, it's a vast, large region. So the landscape is wonderful. But the purpose specifically was to really tell about this new and emerging location in southern Chile, Tierra Fuego. The story arc, and really for here, you can see, and if you look at this timeline of the beginning, the middle, and the end, you're in a very remote region. Why would anyone travel there? You have someone who dislikes tourism, and I think that's very real. That's very authentic. He was very honest, and that's what we wanted him. We wanted his real story. But he's also had a journey himself. And I love his quote that tourists are happy people that walk around. Really, you see a transition. You see some humor that softens this challenges, these conflicts. And then you get to the point where he's seeing an opportunity that he's developing, and he likes tourism. And then now, the very end, his children, his daughters are going to carry forward what he's developed and what he's built. So you go on this journey through his own story and his story arc. The characters in this case, I will say, in this case with Herman, we hadn't met him. And most of the time when we film, we haven't met in person, but a lot of times in Georgia, though, we had connected through Skype, WhatsApp with people before we arrived. But with Herman, he was in such a remote region, there's no Wi-Fi, but we did have some backup options just in case. Fortunately, it worked out. But sometimes in remote locations, you have to just hope that the person you want to be the main character is going to work. But I think just some of these points here, making sure the person is going to be comfortable in telling this story. I will say some of the people that we've had be the main character in a story are not what we originally expected, because someone might be very dynamic and engaging, but you put a camera on them and respectfully, they have a hard time. So you have to be creative on it and ultimately identifying who is going to be the best character. So the backup part is definitely very important. And then lastly, the location. The backdrop for this, Tierra Fuego, was beautiful. But you have to, again, look at some of the variables. It was very cloudy when we were there, so we had to be creative. It did rain a fair amount. And ultimately, though, the visuals that are going to go behind the story are very important. And I think what we did in Georgia, which you'll see later, was really representative of the different aspects of Georgia. So lastly, the location. The second section I'm going to go through, this is looking at the destination marketing, the sustainable tourism development, and in particular, looking at sustainable tourism and some recommendations that we have from our experience in some strategies in effectively developing a region. So, and to target this, I'm going to look at 3 sort of case studies, and I'll show you a couple more films. So the first point, typically, traditionally, and we've been seeing this for over a decade now, is most destinations historically have been focusing on growth, quantity over quality. But we are seeing, and I'll mention this several times because it is a very relevant topic today, is with the growth of over tourism, things have changed in tourism. It's not necessarily, and I think from our perspective, the more progressive and the destinations that are really looking at the long-term viability and development of their product, they are looking at more high value, low impact tourists. So looking at markets where it's not about volume, it's about quality. And what you'll see in the distribution and the marketing that we do, it's about targeting the exact audience that you want to. So targeted marketing, targeted distribution, again, looking at all the variables and long-term with sustainable tourism development. So I couldn't stress this enough, because we know the impacts. I'm sure you've seen it just with over-tourism. Places are closing, places are overrun. They have to, get a ticketing process, limited availability. There's a lot of restrictions that are going in cities like Venice, Barcelona, Paris, all around the world. This is happening. And even in smaller locations where the human capacity is just not there. And so when looking at low impact, high value travelers, it minimizes the environmental impact, both environmentally, but also socially, the community impact. Very important. And a couple of examples that I've actually worked in Botswana years ago. I've not actually been to Bhutan, but both of these destinations are really pushing this. It's much more expensive to go to these locations. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but with their policy and development, it has been about low impact volumes and high value. So these are just two examples to put out there. And Botswana has been getting it for decades, this strategy and approach. And for us, I think a very important, the policy and the development, as you all know, is extremely important in laying this foundation. But I think it's also important with this session today to be conscious of the marketing of it. And that's where sustainable tourism strategy and targeted marketing is very relevant. And I'll use the example leading into our next film in a remote region of Indonesia called Raja Ampat. It's an archipelago of over 400 islands, and it's just east of the Spice Islands. Most people have heard of the Spice Islands, the spice trade back, long ago in the trading from Europe to Asia. The Spice Islands were very popular. And so Indonesia Tourism approached us about telling a story on Raja Ampat, but it was very important to them. They wanted to target the adventure travel market. They wanted to target the adventure travel market in North America. So it was a very specific marketing strategy in marketing and trying to do this high value, low impact traveler, going after a specific demographic and using our character-driven storytelling as really the effective way to connect with that audience and attract that audience. Because I will say, and this photo is very, very symbolic of Raja Ampat in that there's no people there. There's no hotels, there's no infrastructure. And so when you're traveling, you really do travel by a yacht, by boat. And the environment there is very delicate. So it can't handle the mass tourism, the volume, and they know that. And so they're trying to attract a very targeted audience that will be interested in this market and this way of travel through the islands. And so this will be our next film that we'll show, and the first of 3 case studies. We spent 6 days on this yacht in the islands. And again, like I said, they were targeting North America, the adventure market, the luxury market, and sustainability was a very important part. So hopefully, and as I talk to you about the building blocks of storytelling, look for them in this story too. It's important to see some of the elements and see it for yourself. But enjoy this next story on Raja Ampat.
The Indonesian archipelago is the longest archipelago in the world. Almost 4,000 miles from Sumatra to New Guinea. Every time I go to this part of the world, I always get excited. The boat that I work on is a Pinisi boat built in South Sulawesi. We have converted it into nice cabins for passengers to have a comfortable journey. It's like you have a floating hotel that you sleep there and then you wake up, have breakfast and start diving or snorkeling. Plus the beauty of it is that we are using this traditional boat that we can actually sail like the old sailors have done many centuries ago. Raja Ampat is a place where you can get lost in nature. The reason this place is so unique and special is because it's not easy to reach in the first place. You can come here and not seeing any other boats or any other tourists and just be completely on your own. Raja Ampat is full of adventure, above the water, below the water, and not to mention the kind-hearted, wonderful people that live in this area. I love to see people going like, wow, look at this. And then the moment they go in the water and see all this beauty of the underwater, they are flabbergasted. Some of them, they come back to the dinghy or come back on board, they just like cannot speak for a few minutes. Being in the open, in nature, that makes me feel very, very happy. I'm the luckiest man in the world. And now I have a son, which is like my copy. When he was 2.5, I took him to the sea and teach him how to snorkel. And maybe he would be a dive master or a dive instructor one day. Raja Ampat for me is a never-ending exploration. I need like 200 years to explore this whole area, or 300.
So I hope you enjoyed that. So again, very different story. One person primarily drove, Dion drove the story as our primary character. But I wanted to show you some of the results, and I think this was what was very exciting on our end. We produced a total of 6 different films for it. This was the one I just showed you was one specific version, but we created 6 total videos. The earned media placement, if you saw the bird that was jumping around, that's actually called the bird of paradise, and it's only found on one of the islands in Raja Ampat. And or just in this region it's located. It's in other parts too, but that was one of the highlights. And that actually led to a full feature article in the Chicago Tribune in the United States, just to give you an example of some of the press. We also, though, on the trade side, partnered with a number of outbound operators from North America. Again, the distribution for this campaign was North America. For Georgia, our distribution, just to give you comparison, it was Europe. So we can target different regions depending on the strategy and the goals. And I think most importantly was the results. And so in this case, with these yachts and whatnot, and with this experience with the operator we worked with, sales went up 41% because of the content we produce. And that's just amazing numbers to see, with the power of video, the power of a story. And I think it really all feeds together. 33% increase in inquiries, all these new partnerships that have come together. Yes, there is distribution and reach, but I think looking at the business side, which is our approach is really on the business side. I came into production and filming from the business side of it all. And I think that's really been helpful for us and destinations that we work with, because it's not just about showing great pictures and great stories. It's about how is this going to help drive tourism in the region, but in our case, specializing in sustainable tourism also, how is it going to drive good tourism? And so in this case with Raja Ampat, it was a great example of all these elements coming together, a great story and great targeted promotion for this region. So some of the takeaways here, just to put up these points, some of these I've gone over, but know your audience. In this case with Raja Ampat, we were very specifically targeting the adventure travel market. So we wanted to engage with them, make it an authentic story, and educate them. Where is this location? And so in this case, the focus was on a target market, not mass market. This region, as I mentioned, cannot handle it. And I think one of the questions that is brought to mind is, can a destination be accessible to all different travelers? Well, the one point I'll say to that is not every traveler is going to want a remote adventure in a location, and that's okay. And there are different areas of Raja Ampat where it's more accessible and easier to get to than others. So I think it really just comes down to what the product is and how you're going to market to that location, to that audience. So the second case study I'm going to go through today is looking at dispersal. And I think with the growth of over-tourism, maybe you've heard a lot, I don't want to talk about it too much, but I think it's important to look at real and relevant issues that are impacting tourism. One great example is Machu Picchu. So Machu Picchu in Peru, one of the iconic locations, place to visit. We filmed there several years ago. And it was looking at a very different story. So it was a story on dispersal, spreading tourists out to different locations. What's happened in Machu Picchu is it hit over 1 million tourists back 7 years ago, and it resulted in extensive environmental and cultural damage with the Inca Trail. And so ultimately what happened is the government had to come in and put in a lot of restrictions on limiting the number of people that could visit, the time of day, time of year. So it really has become more restrictive. Now, it's still very easy to go there, but I think one of the strategies, and we're actually talking to the Peruvian government right now about doing storytelling and marketing, destination marketing in other regions of Peru. But in this case, this was a story on a different path to Machu Picchu. You know, Machu Picchu is the end result of getting up to a very high plateau. And what we were focused on was telling a story of a different path, a different route to get up to this iconic location. So it is a great example of dispersal. And it was a 5-day trek. Actually, we did it in 5 days. It's typically a 7-day trek. The markets we were targeting: adventure again, culture, luxury. We had a lot of great partners in this campaign. We produced custom content for National Geographic. We had airline partnerships with Avianca and others. So it was a very comprehensive promotion, ultimately, this unique product going up to Machu Picchu. So hopefully, you'll see it. It's a different journey, a different path to get up to a very popular tourist attraction.
Ampuy ko nangka. Sumastay na to, ikaw pa jaway ko. Tukoy lang epi, tukoy trabaho ko nangka. Ampuy ko nangka. Cince suyo ko suyo.
These are the perfect moments that many people try to find. Moments only, seconds, but perfect moments exist. Necessary not to go back to the nature once in a while.
Ampuy ko nangka. Cince suyo ko suyo. Tukuita ko nangka yana pa ikalpache. Hindi tayo kila mama tas ke mama pucha.
So that is a slightly shorter version than the one that we won the award on the #1 adventure travel film. That film was 5 minutes. This was about 3 minutes, a little shorter, less our main guide there, Dalmiro, less talking. In the full film, he actually talks a lot more. But again, for time purposes for today, I wanted to just show a shorter version. But I think here, the big takeaway on this film, and hopefully you enjoyed it, is really looking at the distribution when doing a real sustainable tourism development plan. And that marketing to that target audience was very important. This is a great story of dispersal or dispersion. We're putting less pressure on the Inca Trail that has just gotten just a lot of tourist traffic over the years. Some of the benefits too here is it's spreading out tourism. So more rural communities are benefiting now. So it's becoming more of a holistic view of the whole Machu Picchu region, not just the main road. Most people just take a bus up to Machu Picchu. But I think one of the important things, just knowing that you all are looking at sustainable tourism development, is you can't just assume that just because you're going to send tourists down a specific product or experience, it's going to have a positive impact. You have to have that development plan and infrastructure in place. And obviously a lot of work was done on those remote regions to make sure they can handle the tourists that are coming into this region. And there's a lot of variables to look at. You also saw in that film, I'll call this out, the importance of culture. So that played an important role because of the culture, the heritage of the Incas. And we really tried to make sure that theme is evident in all the variations of the film that we produced. And lastly, the last case study, I really like this one because it's very relevant for those travelers out there, is looking at marketing and promoting the experience versus a very specific location or place or spot. And this is becoming more and more relevant. The example I like to use is Venice, Italy, where you have over 30 million tourists a year coming in, and the local population has got down to close to 50,000. And so ultimately, we're looking at over 500 tourists for one local. And it's just amazing how one location is just, I mean, it's a very popular, it's an iconic travel location. But I think it's just bringing to point that destinations need to be smart in how they're promoting the overall region and not a particular waterfall, not a particular lake, or not a particular cathedral per se, because when you see it now with social and everything being geotagged, and for those that don't know, geotagging is where you put in the exact location through GPS of the location that you're visiting. So if people are on social, on Instagram or Facebook, they're able to see exactly where you went, and they're able to go there too. So understandably, there's some wonderful benefits to that. You can learn about locations you never knew of. But on the destination side and trying to have a sustainable long-term strategy for marketing your location, you might be wary of that and be careful. And so what this location in the United States, Jackson Hole, Wyoming, it's done a very proactive campaign, what they call anti-geotagging. So it's not trying to have a negative impact on people tagging, but more just say, when you tag, promote the region, promote Jackson Hole, do hashtag Jackson Hole, or, really promote the entire region, not a particular spot. And I just think in this day and age, when looking at long-term strategies, this is just a unique one that comes to our mind in our research and our work at looking at different strategies. And I think this is a good one to call out because it talks about promoting the experience, which is what content marketing is, going back to that, and storytelling. And in this case, it's about trying to combat some of the challenges with tourism today. Now looking at the country of Georgia in particular, and this will be the last film I show, is, as you know, and I think that's what's exciting about Eastern European emerging travel destinations, Georgia is right there, and having an opportunity to develop tourism is a great new market, economic driver for the destination. And I think just with some very smart tourism approaches, smart tourism strategies, I think Georgia has a bright future. We spent 10 days there last fall in marketing Georgia, and I'll show you that in a minute. But I think it's more about making sure you're going, some of the points that I've said today, going after that target audience that you're trying to connect with, making it an authentic experience visually for viewers, And in this case with Georgia, they were very interested in the millennial market because typically, studies have shown millennials are very interested in experiences, and they are very interested in responsible and sustainable tourism, cultural tourism, all things that are about long-term sustainable tourism development. So they were very specific in their marketing. And so tourism is an exciting opportunity. So this last film that I'll show, we were there for 10 days. We focused on two major story themes, one on adventure travel in Georgia and one on culture and food. And so we did a whole series of content. As I mentioned, the marketing of it, the destination marketing, was specifically at Europe. So let me show this last film. Enjoy Georgia.
Georgian food has a unique flavor. What I love the most, I like the excitement that it gives me. Eating the food, you almost feel the whole history of the country. It makes me feel good, some kind of satisfaction it brings.
Georgians were making wine 8,000 years ago.
We have something around 525 varieties.
In my opinion, Georgia is the capital of the world in terms of culture, hospitality, and tradition.
მე ვარ ბედნიერი ადამიანი, იმიტომ რომ მე ვაკეთებ იმას, რასაც ჩემი წინაპრები აკეთებდნენ და ჩემმა წინაპრებმა შექმნეს რაღაც საოცარი სიმღერები. ჩემი ოცნებაა ჩვენი დღეს ჩემი სიმღერები ხალხმა იმღეროს და მე არ ვთქვა რომ ეს ჩემია.
We respect our past very much, and we are building our new experiences from that past, and I think that is very healthy. Many Georgian producers are making the wine in Fevri. Fevri is an egg-shaped clay vessel which is buried underground. This tradition of 8,000 years continues still.
But most importantly, the quality of Georgian grapes is so fantastic. And our soil is so fertile. You can throw a seedling, just throw it out, and it will grow like this.
Back then, I remember my grandfather bringing food from the market. And I remember waking up basically with the smell of these greens. It was so aromatic and so strong. Well, the whole Georgian food is a fusion. You have the Persian food influences, you have the Turkish, you have the Mongolian, you have lots of influences. And that's why I'm very careful when I change something, and when I try to do the fusion, I'm very careful because you already have a fusion. I like this profession, it's mine. I never do it because I have to do it. But if I'm in the kitchen, I do it with my whole heart. And I love seeing expression on people's eyes when they like something that I cook, and it's rewarding.
მე თუ არ ვიტირე სიმღერის წერილს, ის სიმღერა არაფერი არ არის. ისე იცოდეთ რომ აქ მას წყალს არ ხმარობ მოსაწმინდად. ეს იადაგიწმინდა მხოლოდ და მხოლოდ ჩემი ცრემლებით, რომელიც იმ პიანინოს წინ იღვრება და მე ნაცვლდება თესოთახი.
So that's our last film, and let me just have some final points here. I think what we really enjoyed about filming in Georgia was, as you saw, we had a cast of characters, different people to help tell that story. And in this case, this was one of the food and culture related films and wine. But I think just overall, selling played a very important role in helping their branding, their vision, their feel they wanted to get out to European travelers. The role of, we in our distribution, we work with micro-influencers, writers. It was very important for us to get, again, just in that, going back to some of the examples I referenced earlier, having a targeted marketing strategy, going out to the exact audience. And so there's a lot of strategies that we implement with our work. We had great media pickup, USA Today and other outlets, again, just trying to get really good exposure for the destination. And a lot of the industry people that we partnered with is very inspiring. Today, we just recently won a new award for that film that I just showed you. And so it's been really nice, just the overwhelming support we're getting through social media. Just today through Facebook, a number of our local, actually we did work with the UNDP in Western Georgia, and they were just promoting it just this morning, which was really nice. Nice to get their support. And so we worked with them and helping identify Besso, the singer there, and actually one of the wine producers. So they were a great local partner to work with, and really, trying to leverage local people and trying to help put together this bigger picture on Georgia. So in summary, I think it's pretty clear just, the importance of storytelling. Hopefully you've gotten some good examples here to really connect with travelers and really seeing the experience. Again, I will say again, storytelling doesn't just have to be through video, it can be through photo and other assets, and we definitely push that, but video does play an important role. The targeted marketing, that long-term strategic approach, couldn't stress this more. Go after that audience that you're trying to attract that will share. It's word of mouth marketing, it's sharing, it's really getting an engaging audience that'll tell their friends, really leveraging social media and the power that people now are able to connect directly with others so quickly, instantaneously, and just leveraging it. And then lastly, how can the dispersal, the going during the off season, promoting a region versus this particular product. There are a lot of great tricks to the trade now, a lot of tactics that destinations are using. So in the marketing of an area. So really, I think I really wanted to make sure that was really stressed to all of you just in sustainable tourism management and development. So I hope you've enjoyed it.